Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlocked, going through all the week's sports news as ever. Hit subscribe so we land in your pod feeds automatically. Joining me, Rob Harris from Sky News as ever, Martyn Ziegler from The Times, Tariq Panja from The New York Times, and a lot of money to get into this week. John Rahm's live contract, Ohtani's Dodgers deal, agent spending. But most importantly, Martyn, you've got to the bottom of the biggest sports news story around.
The sex noises at the Euro 2024 draw, yes, the bottom and all the other parts. So the investigation into this actually flagged up some quite interesting things. The two men got into the venue on the morning of the draw through the entrance where the catering staff were going in. They tried to get in two other gates. Video footage shows that they actually got in unchallenged through the caterer's entrance. Got into the draw hall, taped a microphone under the stand, a mobile phone to a microphone under the stand, which was going to be used by Brian Laudrup. And so when he came on to draw the teams from pot 4, his microphone was switched on, and suddenly they could hear these noises because they were ringing the phone, so that the dial tone was these sort of rather erotic, embarrassing noises. So UEFA registered their concerns with the German security authorities, the police. There's a criminal investigation has been launched there. But as you say, if you can tape a phone to a microphone, you can probably tape much more sinister things.
Yeah, I mean, you can get into the venue for such a big event the day before with that and tape it on. It does make you wonder.
No, not the day before, the day of.
Oh, the day of the event.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should have left a recording of this pod running if that had suddenly started playing in the room.
That would have been a cause for concern.
Although it already does go around governing bodies. In fact, some places a full transcript of this pod goes around those governing bodies. Much perhaps like VAR conversations. And Tariq, something's caught your eye this week.
I've been quite critical of VAR, Luddite that I am, but in the Europa League this Thursday, incredible ending to the Villarreal game at Rennes. Rennes were 3-2 down, needing just a draw to get to the top of the group, and they thought they had it. In the 11th minute of stoppage time, the stadium erupted. Players went back to the halfway line thinking the goal had been given, but no. VAR had caught a decision that even the commentators couldn't understand. 12 seconds after a free kick hit the crossbar, the ball ended up going in. But after it hit the post, came back to the player who struck the ball. And Martyn, Rob, there is a rule. A player can't kick a free kick to himself. And there you go. The ball was chalked off. And look, it's a horrible rule if you like. But again, that's a really good use of VAR. So yeah. Well done to those. I'm sure Rennes fans won't be thinking it was the greatest decision, I guess.
Well, you can think, if you take a penalty and it hits the woodwork, you can't take it again. That's well known. I suppose less well known is if it's a free kick.
It's not like five-a-side kicking it off the side.
No, but I just thought, if you want the rules enforced and you want the use of VAR, it kind of worked in that instant.
Well, perhaps VAR and sex noise is the least of UEFA's problems and European football's problems, because it has seemed like a bit of a week of turmoil for the European game. We'll get to the referee attack in Turkey in a moment, issues with Greek fans, but starting at the very top with the UEFA president Alexander Ceferin, first elected in 2016. Why, less than a year after he was re-elected for another term, are we talking about his own presidential future and his determination to hold on? What has been going on behind the scenes?
Well, there's some proposed statute changes which would effectively mean that because his first term was not a full term, that doesn't count, and that actually you should have 3 full terms. This is basically following what happened with FIFA, Gianni Infantino, so exactly the same thing. The IOC's, that is slightly different because Thomas Bach will have served 3 full terms, but there is sort of moves from other IOC members that should be changed too. So it's all up in the air, and from what I understand, this UEFA is also planning to scrap the age limit of 70 for executives on its executive committee, which is another sort of fairly controversial move.
So many more decades for you to be able to get on the Exco at some point?
For me, yeah, well,
Yeah.
you know, still in my 30s, obviously. So, yeah, you know, somewhere in the next 50 years.
That was a refuse to rule out, I think, Tariq, wasn't it?
Just to go back to those term limits, guys, we know why they exist. In the IOC's case, after a major scandal with the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics in the 90s, and with FIFA and UEFA after the 2015 football scandal, the corruption scandal, Gianni Infantino, in fact, helped write up those reforms when he was a UEFA delegate to FIFA to draw up the reforms. And now they all want to stay on. This idea that this powerful group, it's hard to resist being the top dog, and the reforms are there to prevent people from staying around. It looks like you can just change them as you wish once you're in power.
And the rules do talk about serving no more than 3 terms of 4 years, so effectively a maximum of 12 years, but it all comes down to not counting these partial first terms, which are the result of Michel Platini being forced out at UEFA, Sepp Blatter being forced out at FIFA. But there is some confusion. Certainly UEFA are trying to put the word out, particularly through a Marca article that was quite a curious one, that they're changing the statutes, but they don't really need to do it anyway because he could stay till 2031 anyway. So what is the situation with this?
Well, to me, I think the slight difference is it's correct that I think that had already been brought out, hadn't it, earlier in the year, from what I understood. But is the new bit the term limits, scrapping the term limits, which maybe is a way of trying to increase the sort of the backing for this overall change?
Yeah, you get to keep your, for want of a better word, cronies on board, because you extend their term limits as well. The thing you referenced, Martyn, was quietly added to the statute several years ago, actually, and I'll just read it out. It's quite short. It says terms of office served before July the 1st, 2017 shall not be taken into account for the purposes of the term limits set out in Article 22. So basically, after Ceferin was elected before this statute change, so it didn't count to him. But you're right, it would affect his other members of the council, and maybe they all want to stay on board too.
Now, David Gill, we understand, spoke out in this recent UEFA Executive Committee meeting. David Gill, the former Manchester United chief executive, former British vice president of FIFA, quite a personal attack, particularly in that Marca article, questioning why he even spoke out at all. David Gill also still is the UEFA treasurer. And it talks about how long he's been in some of these positions. But if we think back to how he first joined the FIFA Council, then the Exco in 2015, he was willing to walk away from it before he even joined, wasn't he? Because in those moments after David Gill was like, well, I'm not taking up the FIFA vice presidency. Of course, he then later did because Blatter within days decided to step down.
Yeah, Gill, I think didn't want to stay on the FIFA Council after that. I think he did 4 years and that was enough, and he's concentrated on UEFA, but he is going to step down when his term limit comes to an end. Now, he's been portrayed in some sections of our media as saying that he's sort of leading the campaign against this, which I don't think, knowing him as we do, he's not the sort of person who's going to lead any sort of campaign. He was, I think he made clear what his views were and that he should stick to the statutes and it's a point of principle. But I don't think he's going to be sort of on the phone to other people in Europe trying to get this overturned. I just think he's put out his position. So I don't see any sort of big movement to oppose this, really. I just think it's going to get waved through.
It shouldn't, should it? I mean, I suppose him talking is how boards should work, where people with differing opinions bring them up, and then you get a decision at the end. And in terms of good governance, I got a message from someone pretty senior in football about this, and basically it said if the major associations in Europe actually had the balls to stand up and call it out, then it might make a difference. The person senior person in football. Now, let me ask you guys, why can't associations that are big international football associations do anything about this? Or why do they seem so unwilling to do anything? When not just this, we talked about the Saudi Arabia decision a few weeks ago. Why does nothing happen?
Or do we see it in that Marker article? The way that they've gone after someone just for trying to raise issue of statutes.
Yeah, but you're a senior figure in a major association, and you're getting rolled, week after week. It just seems. What's the point of having, FA presidents if they're unwilling to put their head above the parapet when they need to?
They like being in the room too much. The cozy sort of ways of the world of football politics.
Yeah, I think that's you've hit the nail on the head there, Rob. I mean, football politics is all about protecting. If you're head of a national federation, you're like wanting to get things for yourself. So you want to get the under-17 World Cup. You want to get the Women's Champions League final, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So you want these sort of prestigious things. So you feel you have to sort of work with the people who are in charge and award these things. And it's this system of patronage which has been around ever since I've been covering this sort of FIFA, UEFA, IOC. It's just unfortunately how it works, and it's very difficult to change.
You say that in that time, you're right, Martyn. You've been covering it for such a long time. In that period, there's been police raids, people arrested, shipped off to New York, put in jail, and the system still can't be changed. And it's amazing how it just stays like a barnacle, just attached. You can't change it no matter what happens.
It's almost impossible to do so. It's much better than it was. I mean, think back to what the IOC was like in the late 90s, and FIFA after that. Where we are literally talking about brown envelopes with tens of thousands of dollars. That doesn't happen quite as explicitly, that's for sure. But there are other ways.
Well, one thing struck me. We see the top bosses in world football going to be feted in meetings with presidents of countries, their football federations, grand visits. But when there's true issues to address, perhaps they're less visible. And obviously it's happened now, so we have had the aftermath of it. So we have the scope to really comment on it. That it did strike me that no one from the top of the game went to Turkey this week. Of course, it follows that horrific attack on the referee Halilmurat Mela. It followed the Turkish Super League game. It was the president of Ankara Gücü, Tariq Koja, who landed that punch, and it, of course, left the referee in hospital. Really serious incident had been building. We had some sort of written statements, shows of solidarity, but has there anything been meaningful from the world football governing bodies, from UEFA, from FIFA?
It's definitely a sort of crisis moment, I think, for European and actually world football. It's sort of been building up to this. There've been various things. I mean, if you look in what's happened in Greece, we had the Italian referee David Massa. He was kicked in the crotch during the Athens derby earlier this year. UEFA pulled all its referees out of Greece as a result of that. Just a couple of years ago, or maybe about 5 years ago, the POK president was banned after going onto the pitch with a gun in a holster. It just seems that this whole sort of tension and anger around refereeing decisions has just been getting sort of up to a ridiculous level. I think it's probably partly actually, I think, driven by social media as much as anything. And I think it is a sort of crisis for the authorities, and not just in Turkey or Greece, but more generally that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder. Rob's right. These are the difficult roles that the global and regional governing bodies have, and I suppose they would say, these are national competitions. What can we do? And if it was a European game, would you probably ban the team from competition, etc. European competition. It's a question of jurisdiction. But I mean, just the idea that someone can, a president of a team no less, can walk onto the field and punch the referee in the face, and he got other officials kicked him. It's quite remarkable.
Well, for greater perspective on this now, we're joined by the former General Secretary of the Turkish Football Federation, also a one-time board member at Galatasaray, Ebru Köksal. Welcome to Sport Unlocked.
Thank you for inviting me.
So how shocking was this incident to you? And is it something that had been building, the atmosphere within Turkish football, that this had been almost something long feared?
Well, I mean, there's always been a lot of tensions and animosities and feuds between the clubs, and especially recently, there has been lots of complaints about referees and how they're not necessarily doing their job right, whether on the pitch, on the side of the pitch, or in front of the VAR cameras. So it's been quite contentious, and of course, the rivalry is never remaining on the pitch, and some of the presidents are really fueling these arguments and disputes, and with giving lots of examples of wrong decisions. And yes, it does happen in every country, I think, but usually maybe for an hour it's discussed after the match, but it's not carried out for days and weeks. So I think it was coming, and it was a really sad scene to see the referee, one of the top referees in Turkey, not only punched but then kicked while he was on the ground. So it was very shocking, and these are not the news that you want to be at the top of the trending list globally.
No, and you mentioned that, and that story was viral very quickly. It was on the news pages and not the sports pages, even in countries that don't follow football as closely as we do here in Europe. As you say, a terrible kind of advertisement for Turkey. And I was just Googling before, and this headline from 2015, violence is killing Turkish football and no one is doing anything about it. That was in 2015. Here we are in 2023, and we've got this situation, Ebru. Now the games have been suspended. The president has condemned it. Why is this impossible to resolve? Because it's not an isolated incident, as awful as it is.
I don't think it's impossible at all. But again, there's a lot to discuss, of course. In Turkey, most of the clubs are not owned by institutions or people or companies. They're basically member owned, so very much like Real Madrid and Barcelona. So the presidents are elected for periods of 2 to 3 years, and after a year, if you're unsuccessful, you run the risk of being voted out. So you need very quick success, and whenever that success on the pitch is not coming, then you start creating some chaos and conspiracy theories about why the team is not successful, because there are external factors like, referees or federation taking sides. But in reality, people don't really own their own mistakes, and instead try to, let's say, look cute to the members, to the fans, and fuel these rivalries off the pitch. So I've said this many times. I think, first of all, one important thing to do is take out the league from the federation. As you well know, in 31 countries in Europe, the league is separate from the federation. And what that allows is for the clubs really to own that league and to work together to make it more attractive and interesting and grow the revenues, and the rivalry then pretty much remains on the pitch. So you are not really trying to fuel these animosities. And Turkey is very dear to my heart, of course, and we are one of the countries that generate top revenues in Europe. It's either 6th place or 7th place, whichever way you look at it. But then Our club coefficient ranking is in 9th place. The national team men's is 43rd place. Women's is, I think, maybe 64, something like that. So we're unfortunately not using that opportunity really well. The revenue potential has stalled pretty much. Nobody's watching the Turkish league outside of Turkey. I was just looking at some of the social media followings from a report I saw recently, and the Super League has only 1.2 million followers on social media combined, whereas the Turkish clubs combined have 108 million social media followers. So the gap shows that, yes, people love their club. They go to every match, they watch every match, but for them, the collective of the Super League doesn't really mean a lot, or they don't have the trust in it. They don't think it's fair, and then you see all these either fan-led events or violence by worse, the officials. So it's really sad. So I think the first step is really, really for the clubs to get together and demand this split out. When I was the general secretary back in 2011, one of the projects we worked on was this separation of the league from the federation in a certain time frame. By 2014, we would have put it in a separate entity. And of course, that's not enough. You still need professional management selected based on merit rather than political appointments.
I mean, we've seen it's not just Turkish football. There's been Greek football going through really serious problems at the moment. They've had multiple problems with referees. They've had to bring in, UEFA have had to provide referees, and then they withdrew them because of the abuse referees were getting. Do you think there's a sort of this is a sort of crisis point where things have to change, and there has to be not just a sort of Turkey looking at this, but a sort of perhaps a more sort of broader international focus on referees and protecting referees?
Yes, I think it's very important. VAR is contentious everywhere, I think, and I'm not sure if it's really helping make it more transparent or more fair. I think really important next step is to make those correspondence between the VAR room and the referee on the pitch public, right? Mm-hmm. Let everyone hear about it rather than speculate what went on. And I think that's transparency hopefully will bring back some of the much needed trust in the refereeing system. And yes, it is still human sitting on both sides, whether it's on the pitch or in front of the VAR. And yes, there will be mistakes, but hopefully they'll be, equal or proportionate throughout the league. Especially in Turkey, we have a law that is called Precautions for Violence Within Football, and that covers fan violence, that covers anyone speaking out of line and telling the fans or offending the other fans, other side's fans, and calling them to action or something. And it hasn't been maybe implemented so far as strictly. And yes, the federation keeps banning certain president for 45 days from coming to the stadiums because, he has made a really too much heated speech or something, or another coach for having said something after the match. But obviously, this is not working. I think there needs to be a truce between the clubs and everyone working together to really make this an exemplary sport. I mean, this is what the youth is looking at and saying, do I want to play? Do I want to watch? Do I want to be part of it? Do I want to work in any of these clubs or the federation? And I think sport has such an important role to play, being showing the integrity, showing the ethics, showing the values, showing the right side of everything. But it's been not only in Turkey, as you say, in some countries, unfortunately, it's become a matter of life or death. Yes, it is very important in our lives. I love football, but it should not be about, violence or these kinds of actions.
For all of the emotions football brings and abuse, the idea that a club president has gone on the field there and punched the referee in the face, it's still quite rare that something from someone that senior like that can take place. And, we've had an incident, again, Turkey, we had the Fenerbahce bus shot in 2015 with a gunman. This febrile atmosphere, sometimes with football, we watch from TV and we think, oh, look at that incredible atmosphere in the stadium in Turkey. And it is, we saw Galatasaray at Old Trafford, those fans made it an incredible game and they came away with a great result. How do you keep that passion in Turkey, but then not have these incidents we're talking about? Is there like a law that needs to be passed in Turkey or something legislative that needs to take place?
There is a law. There is legislation. I think you need a leader that everybody trusts, and you need the club presidents getting together and working together to increase the trust in the game, right? So not everyone every weekend coming out and saying, once again, the referees were against us this weekend. And you have 12 club presidents saying that, which means actually that's not possible, right? That's just not possible. So I think it's creating that collaboration and camaraderie that I think used to exist 15, 20 years ago, where the clubs knew they were all on the same boat, and in order to compete against other countries, other leagues, they had to work together. That's the approach we need. I mean, now I don't think the tender has started yet, but for next year there is the possibility that the broadcaster might change and the revenues might come down once again in the next cycle, which is unheard of, right? Anywhere else, everybody's getting bigger and bigger TV contracts.
Turkey with 9 years, obviously, to sort things out before co-hosting the Euros with Italy. Ebru, with one of your other hats on, with more uplifting news of the week of chair and women in football. This the week with the announcement of the first female referee in the Premier League, Rebecca Welch. How important will it be, that moment when Rebecca is refereeing Fulham against Burnley?
I think it's a great development. Tuesday night here in Saudi Arabia, the opening match of the Club World Cup again had the female trio on the pitch. But I think we're looking forward to the day when this is not news, right? These are still exceptions. Female presidents, female board members, female referees refereeing male matches. I think in the Premier League, we're waiting for the day when a female coach will be at the helm of a Premier League men's club, right? That's probably the last news that we're waiting to hear. But I think in terms of capabilities, there is no doubt about how much the females can do. It's just a matter of time that those doors not only open, but remain open.
Rebecca Welch has been on a 13-year journey to this point, since starting in refereeing, combining it with work in the National Health Service. And Martyn, you had the chance to speak to her in recent years.
2 years ago, she was about to become the first woman to referee in the English Football League. She's a very interesting person. I thought it's quite. Like when she started refereeing in 2010, she said she's had absolutely no sort of ambitions or ideas about getting any making it into a career even, and it's almost like it's been sort of landed upon her.
And you hope now with Rebecca in the Premier League that doesn't become another flashpoint for the trolls and ghouls that lurk on social media.
Yeah, for sure. And also with Sam Allison, he's going to be the first black referee of a Premier League match for 15 years when he takes charge of a match on Boxing Day.
Ebru, we've had the news this week that Alexander Ceferin, the UEFA president, and UEFA are looking to change the statutes there, so the 12-year limit on the current council and himself can potentially be extended should they choose to go on. We had Gianni Infantino in Qatar, maybe just before that, announcing that FIFA was his first term didn't count, so he could go beyond 12 years. We've had the IOC and Thomas Bach thinking about a statute change so he could go on beyond the term limits there as well. What do you think about this? You're talking about change and fresh perspective, and you've got these guys who seem to want to stay on forever.
Yeah. Well, again, this is not, I think, specific to football, but this is just people in powerful leadership positions start thinking that if they leave, the organization will fall apart. And it's their presence that will change things. I think that's why the term limits are there. And I haven't really seen in my lifetime any organization crumble after a leader left. If you have really put in the right policies, procedures, structures in place, and the right governance, then the leaders are simply leading it for a period and then passing it on to others. Again, I'm not legally versed enough to say whether coming in the middle of somebody else's term should count as one term or not. But I think outstaying your welcome sometimes is not necessarily the best way to leave a legacy. And if you have managed the succession planning quite well, the organization should go and continue prospering after you leave. But again, it's part of politics, right? So it's difficult to make a comment on that.
Esmail Ebru, thank you so much for joining us. In Saudi Arabia, man, where else would you be to end the year? It really has perhaps been the year of Saudi Arabia.
Yes, and I've spent 5 days here, and I must say, seeing it with your own eyes for the first time and also meeting the people on the ground has been extremely helpful to understand the strategy and where they're trying to go and how sincere they are about it. Especially my female counterparts have been very, very impressive.
Well, moving on to the world of money and sport, and some huge numbers flying around this week announced by FIFA. We start with their agent spending for 2023, and this just involves international transfers, so not the cut agents get from domestic deals. And FIFA revealed $888 million of agent spending in 2023, a record, of which the majority of which English clubs were the biggest spenders, $280 million. Saudi Arabian clubs, $86 million. There is a particular reason FIFA do want these numbers out there. Is it to sort of lead people to question why agents are earning so much?
Probably because they've lost this legal challenge over having a cap on agents' fees. They lost it in England with an arbitration decision. They've lost it in some European courts. I think it's basically just a reflection of transfer spending in many ways. What I thought was really fascinating about this is how low the agents' fees payments were in Spain during 2023. Something like $36 million. So almost like a tenth of the amount spent on agents in the Premier League, which just shows what's happening on commercially, financially in Spain compared to England.
Yeah, I guess that's a function of how the transfer market has been in recent years, with the Premier League outspending La Liga and all the others by such a major factor. But, good news for agents. 888, lucky number in China, and a lucky number for agents.
And that English rule, other part of the reforms, is seen as acceptable to stop agents representing both the buying and the selling clubs. But no caps on what they can earn at the moment.
No, it's even ridiculous that they should be allowed to represent both the player and a club in a transfer. It's one of those mind-boggling things, but it happens certainly in England. In the vast majority of deals, transfer deals, the agent will be paid by both the club and the player, which is basically a sort of cheat to avoid paying some tax, but it shouldn't happen.
Well,
Yeah.
Talking of tax, Tariq, what's benefiting FIFA in France?
Oh, yeah. It's a potential new home for FIFA, certainly a lure to France from the French government. Emmanuel Macron's efforts to make France a business-friendly destination. We see a tax-free offering to FIFA and all the other sporting federations that are recognised by the IOC, more than 30. And it's proving controversial. The French Senate doesn't want it, but it looks like this law will be forced through.
What justification are they giving for introducing this law?
They want France to be a leader in sports diplomacy, whatever that means. I don't know what that actually means. I think having high-profile sporting bodies is just a chance to show off France in a way. But what this means is tax-free status for all the employees. For example, Gianni Infantino, if he's part of this, he got a base pay of around 2 million plus more in bonuses. All of that potentially is tax-free, as well as for all the other FIFA staffers. And no corporation tax. Let's just remember, FIFA is poised to generate $11 billion for the period of the World Cup to USA 26. The French say the commercial activities will be taxed, but they don't say how all of that will be divided. It is basically a come and base yourself here FIFA, and if you're others too, you can come as well.
It's not the only country that's doing this, is it? Because I think we did mention a few months ago, Hungary has got the same offer, and the International Swimming Federation is moving there to take advantage of those sort of tax breaks. So I wonder because Switzerland has been the sort of centre for many of these sports for a long time and still is. I wonder if there's going to be a drip is going to lead to a flood away to France, Hungary, other countries are going to bring this in.
But there are many staff that don't want to go to Miami from FIFA, aren't there? Some of their legal and ethics staff who have resisted the move to one of the new FIFA homes, particularly ahead of the 2026 World Cup with that new Miami base.
Yeah, the legal, compliance and ethics departments be moved in their entirety from Zurich to Miami. The aim is to do it from August 2024. Something like 120 staff. And not surprisingly, 3/4 of them, from what I understand, have made it clear that they're not prepared to move. The offer's not good enough, even though FIFA, I think, have improved that offer. Uprooting families and things like that. Obviously, it's a massive decision. And I think it's a strange move, actually, this Miami move. I'm not quite sure what's behind it. You've got the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which FIFA does a huge amount of business with in cases, just down the road in Lausanne. And what's that going to mean in terms of international travel from Miami to Lausanne? Certainly not going to do much for the environmental footprint, is it?
They haven't justified it, and we have not been able to have any press conferences with FIFA or certainly FIFA for a while. There's you can add that to the list of questions. But could you think of a justification for Miami?
Well, I think all they said when they announced it was just sort of part of it, FIFA's global sort of, spreading its largesse globally and being more global rather than just being everything situated in Switzerland. I think they're going to share the office space initially with the World Cup team, the organising team, and then basically stay on there before. I think that what they said is this is in line with the global vision of an organisation that has 211 member associations.
Must be why Gianni was in Guam. Maybe the commercial operation will be moving to that island.
Well, FIFA's saying they're making football global, although quite often that is France, Saudi and the United States, although they have been involved helping the growth of the African Football League too. I wonder what appeals to them so much about the United States. Is it some of the big money contracts flowing around? Just this week, a huge couple of deals, one in golf, one in baseball, starting in baseball for the LA Dodgers, handing out a $700 million deal for Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, enormous deal. And what was really interesting about it is most of the salary is deferred. to some point in the future. So on the payroll, he'll be paid just $2 million a year. But he's such a formidable talent. He's just the rarest of specimens in baseball, where he's an ace pitcher as well as a batter. That combination is very, very rare, and he's so good. You can think of it, if you like cricket, as being a Shane Warne and Virat Kohli wrapped up into one. So you can imagine that level of talent. It's very rare.
Yeah, I heard it compared to being in football a brilliant goalkeeper and a top scorer.
Yeah, incredible. But the numbers you're saying, Rob, so the 2 million a year while he's playing, and then 64 million a year from when he's finished. But he's not going to be short of money. His endorsements annually, sponsorships and the like, are worth 50 million on their own without any of his salary counted.
How can they defer this salary? If we were talking about European football, we'd be saying it was something to get around FFP.
It's actually quite a common thing in American sport. You've seen it with American football players that actually they agree a deal which they're going to be paid millions a year for years after they retire. So it's not a bad way of, because you always get the situation when you stop playing and suddenly you fall off a cliff edge financially. If actually you can do a deal which guarantees you $2 million a year for 35 years, that can suit everybody.
In his case, it's not $2 million for 35 years. It's just a $2 million while he's playing, and then 64 million afterwards. And don't forget, the LA Dodgers are also owned by some of the same people that own Chelsea. We were talking about those long contracts there. And they also have a form of FFP, a type of budget cap in baseball, after which you have to pay taxes. But for baseball, it's not going to be 2 million. The number is $46 million a year on the payroll of the Dodgers. Not the full 70 million, but still, a considerable whack. And for Ohtani, he gets the benefit of paying his taxes away from California after he finishes. It's America's one of the highest income tax states in the US. So, a win-win if you're looking at it that way.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I wonder about Jon Rahm's tax bill, because, of course, he's made that reputed, $500 million move to Live Golf. Quite a few numbers floating around, but we thought it was all heading toward maybe some sort of peace deal with Live and the PGA Tour, but it's a reminder that's still very much in play, with rival offers from private equity firms, including the Fenway Sports Group, which also owns Liverpool. And then they go to Jon Rahm, one of the world's best golfers, the highest ranked golfer to make the switch to Live, and a huge payday for him. They're still coming in Live.
Yeah, you might ask why they are doing this now when they're about to take over. The Saudis are about to sort of effectively take over the tour. And I think there's still things to be negotiated, and this is leverage, isn't it? This is just showing that actually, whatever happens, Live Golf is going to be holding the purse strings.
It's
not Live Golf, the Saudis, I should say. Such
a big signing as well of all the players. Jon Rahm, you can't overstate what a big signing that is. Even Rory McIlroy was saying he's going to have to play in the Ryder Cup now, having said in the past that those who went to Live Golf shouldn't. And it just sums the whole situation up and shows how Saudi Arabia PIF will eventually win. It's money. Just offer more and more money until it's hard to say no. And you saw Jon Rahm's statement. Jon Rahm, who said he would never go to PIF, has gone to PIF, and he talks about it being for his family, and that is, shorthand for big wads of cash.
What happens to that deal between Live and the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia? One of three things to be watching out for in the coming days. Something else? What do Russians decide on the Olympics? They have been allowed to go as neutrals by the IOC, but Vladimir Putin seems to have questioned whether or not they will accept that offer?
Well, we've got the Super League decision, the European Court of Justice decision expected next week. I think there'll be, whatever happens, I suppose the big question is, if it goes against UEFA, is this going to mean a Super League, a European Super League? And personally, I think not. Even if they win A22, the company behind the Super League thing, I think it's dead in the water, just because the English clubs are prevented now by the Premier League from joining, French clubs by the CVC deal, German clubs don't want it. Super League, Spain and Italy, anybody?
Yeah, I don't know. A22 have been on manoeuvres, but I'm pretty much in your camp with this, Martyn. It doesn't seem at this point very likely.
Well, that is something to watch out for as we bring an end to this week's episode of Sport Unlocks. As ever, you can message us at Sport Unlocks on X, Facebook and Instagram. And if you hit subscribe, we land in your feed automatically. But for now, thank you for listening. Goodbye.